Thanks for your words. Okay, so hello everyone. We are very happy to be with you today, or even at home over the internet. So the situation is quite funny for us because in the end we are going to talk about sport with you, about body in space and in the city, while everyone is locked up. So it's quite strange, but we will do this like that. So I'm François, and with Nicolas, we are two of the 4 partners of NP2F. And we have to say, to introduce that we all have training as architects, but also as urban planners. And so we have at the base of our reflections an approach on created uses on form in the public space. So we really started working together in 2010. And today we'd like to show you our approach through 2 mixed steps. You will see this. One is more about theory, thoughts, about theoretical thoughts represented by 2 exhibitions to set out the main objective of each project and what we had in mind when we developed them. And we will talk about exactly the sport theme. And the second mixed part is about the translation in the reality, and with a few projects that we are going to show and to share with you. So, okay. So I'm going to talk about sport and games in general, but we have been specifically interested in this theme for a few years at the office, because this approach allows to consider the space that surrounds us otherwise. A public, a place, or a public space are no longer fixed forms, but vector dependent on the use and practices that take place there. This is the Peter Bruegel's children's games, and it insists on a saturation of the painting space by an other representation of games and activities. 2,000 children playing 91 different games here. So what we can see is that the public square becomes a simple support. The architecture is like a pretext, and it insists on 4 points in the way of Aldo Vanek's Amsterdam playgrounds. It's the form creating uses, uses create places, and places create the city. That's the first point. So then seeing a space under the prism of sports makes it possible to think of new connection, to create a new grid of reading between a specific place and its context. New consistencies. Space does not have one identity, but different faces. This is a fairly natural extension of our daily and multiple practice of the city. Here you can see a ventilation grid becomes a football cage. So we look at the street differently when we drive it, when we cross it, or when we stop to stretch during a footing. In fact, the object becomes an open use, allowing a permanent reinterpretation. Lamppost is here also a dangerous football player. Or concrete blocks on the ground are seats, but also skate ramps or silent landscape without anyone. Here, a round corner in the ground becomes a BMX springboard. We can think that, or a bench here in front of the Pavillon de l'Arsenal. We are going to speak about this after, but here a bench, a sitting comes out of the playground and creates an ambiguity between inside and outside, and between sport and city. This way of using space is not due to the desire to divert, because the places and the object themselves are not transformed. It's rather to think about the constraints of each places and therefore their potential. Uses a space in itself. And sport facilities are deeply accorded to their uses. Other architects of course, worked on this subject before us. Aldo Vanek is probably the most famous. We looked a lot his work, his concept, and his playgrounds, and specifically his playgrounds in Amsterdam, built after the World War. And Aldo Vanek creates some objects, a toolbox in a manner of speaking, with furniture, benches, sport equipment, and he integrated this object in 700 playgrounds in Amsterdam built after the war. And I can repeat this: the form creates uses, uses create places for him, and places create the city. And in fact, all these places helped to create a new kind of urban environment in Amsterdam. In a way, it's the work of Bowo. It is a way of deconstructing a city by architecture and by the uses created, not necessarily by the iconic equipment or architectural figures, but rather by the actual built DNA of the city. Bowo called these places nameless architecture in their research in Made in Tokyo. So sport practice creates a more direct perception of the environment, a phenomenological reading of the city. So in 2014, for an exhibition in Paris, we developed this approach. By identifying these places in all the big, the Grand Paris Métropole, by identifying these places, trying to understand their characteristics, their quality, and their potential, we have established a DNA, among other, but a DNA all the same from the Grand Paris. The exhibition was in this way called Sport, Portrait d'une Métropole, and we mainly dissected the 2007, the 27,000 places and existing equipment to try to understand the multitude of contacts that the sport create with the city. So we organize our research in three parts. One is the atlas. It's some precise drawings showing the reality of the sport places. The second one is the theme. That's some relevant theme questioning sport in Paris and in the Grand Paris. And the third is the tools, which are the lowest common denominator to speak about the architecture of sport, as Aldo Vanek did before. For us, it's the nets, the structure, the furniture, the lines, etc. So we drew for this exhibition, as I said, 27 situations, presented in super big format during the exhibition. And these drawings the idea of this drawing was to show the connection scientifically between sport and cities. So this is some isometry dimetric. So the major stay realistic. So this first drawing was that we made for the exhibition showed the garden of a house in Saint-Geneviève-des-Bois near Paris, and it's Romain Covolant's garden. And Romain, this guy, decided to transform his garden, or more specifically his mother's garden, into a big concrete form for skateboarding. These forms created new uses for the garden, and at the same time, a new urbanity for the town. On the weekend, Romain opens it on his friend as well as the locals and young people who want to practice skateboarding. The fences disappear and the garden is open for everybody. It is called Covoland, like Disneyland, but for Romain Covoland. And here, after this example, I'm going to speak about the sport field, public sport field of the Pigalle du Perret. It's a very famous sport field because artists paint its wall very often, and because it's very close of the Pigalle district, which is a well-known tourist hotspot of the hill of Montmartre and the Sacré-Cœur. Here is the sample public sport field, TEP in France, TEP. It's different because it's in a very narrow and located in an historic district in the heart of Paris, along the Philippe Auguste Wall, the King of France. And this is a very trendy and exclusive neighborhood. So a very different neighborhood. Here in the atlas is a different scale, and we can see this unique and emblematic situation in Paris and in the west of Paris. These two large stadiums, the Parc des Princes of Roger Taillibert on the left, and built for the football in 1972. And the Jean Bouin Stadium of Rutier Ricciotti on the right, built in 2013, have been built side by side upon the peripheric, the road there, the peripheric around Paris, and just separated by one very residential street here, very tiny. We love this situation because, as you can see, this stadium are built in a dense urban fabric close to the center of Paris. And as architects, and to continue to think about the topic of this lecture, we really like the idea to keep this kind of stadium in the center of the city. And in France, it's not so often. So this is another place, Beaugrenelle, a slab urbanism, and a place of sport take place there. So this is a gymnasium, a beautiful gymnasium here in the middle, built by this is the La Doumègue Gymnasium, built by Jean Pécou in 1972. Here is one of the very famous Roland Garros built by Louis Faure du Jarric in 1928. And in fact, the strange thing is here is the Bois de Boulogne, very intense on the top, and so the residential district of the Boulogne city on the bottom. And then this this very important place of tennis. I'm sorry. So the second thing was the theme that sports speaks about when we think about the relation between sport and city, and this shows the public open sports fields. As I said, in Paris, it's a TEP, and they're positioned in the different plots. And it interests us because they are installed very opportunely in the city on available sites. So they are very different in form, but they show what is possible to place. That is possible to place sport everywhere, and to place in very different areas inside the plots or on the roof, maybe. Another thing here, these children play under the Paris Metro. They necessarily have a metropolitan practice, a feeling. This relationship, it's about a vibration, a shared energy. That is very important when we think about the phenomenology of sport in the city. So these links between sport and city can be visual or organized in even in co-visibility. And the person who practice sport looks at the city and vice versa. So lighting reveals a place, gives a display to display a strong presence. So here is a swimming pool of La Cour des Lions in Paris, very open to the city. Or else from a heated and chlorinated space, even voluptuous, swimmers look at the metropolis and its frenzy. So the city and the sport are here in a co-presence. Here is a situation in a tower in the south of Paris. Here, through large triangles bay, the housing tower enters to the track of athletics. This is inside the La Doumègue gymnasium I showed you before. And the exchanges are multiple, and the entities are no longer frozen in a simple situation of co-presence, but allowed to imagine more of a mix of uses. That's very important for us. Then the last part of our study of our exhibition for the sport in the city was to isolate 9 elements, 9 tools of the sport facility areas: light, furniture, structure, support, morphology, tribunes, and lines. This is in order to understand the constitution of the sport facilities and how to make them maybe better or richer. So here is the structure. So you can see sport areas are frequently a laboratory of constructions innovations. The first building is in a pre-stressed concrete in Paris on the left. It's the Butokai swimming pool, and the first building designed by a computer, the Parc des Princes of Roger Taillibert. But also at the bottom of the drawing, the longest ever wooden span in the INSEP building here. It's like 100 meters. And it was the world record in 1960. So the architecture of sport is also a question of innovation, competition, and of maximize architecture. here is inside the INSEP building. Another element is the furniture, and I will finish the exhibition with this element. The furniture is here. You can see a snake, a beautiful equipment designed by Émile Ayot, a famous French architect, who designed the tower also, Tour Nuage. Or here, the public equipment by Nobushi, the black mantra, the black side mantra, sorry, in Sapporo. So their designs are now part of the patrimony, of the legacy of those architects around the world. Now I'm going to speak about one project, which is the public field TEP Stadium Charlemagne. So after the exhibition, we had a direct commission from the City Hall. So this is our drawing during the exhibition. And the mayor just asked us to change nothing. So we did it. We didn't change anything, and or almost. We just added a sport floor and some basic furniture and nets. That's just what we did. So without people, it appears as an installation support of uses. One of these projects is the kids playground here. And some other projects are the continuous ground, as I said, which appear to be the same everywhere. In fact, the complex of the ground change depending on sport practices. For example, here for kids, it's totally soft with 10 centimeters of rubber to prevent child's fall. So this park is quite successful and with a lot of people practicing sports, but also a public space. And we have to say that we are impressed by the creativity of people. And this child on the top here is on the climbing hill. Was inventing a game where the goal is to fill his ball in the basket just on the right. So the appropriation there is total. Can continue with Nico.
Tu coupes ton partage ou?
Yes, sure.
Sure. Just a minute, technical moment. Après, tu me dis si ça marche.
Oui.
Ouais. Okay, I'm going to continue with another project that we are developing, a bigger scale. It's an extension of the intimate relationship that we are working on between architecture, urbanism, building and city. And it's called the Cathédrale des Sports, Sports Cathedral, placed in Bordeaux, Brazza. It's a private promotion project. In France, it's not quite normal. Whose construction will begin, I hope, in September. The user is already identified. It's a UCPA, which is an historical association in France. And it has become famous by the creation of outdoor camps and recreation sites, especially at the seaside or in the mountain. But recently, the UCPA has been trying to install this outdoor sports equipment inside the city. And we are developing and thinking several projects with them. So the sports cathedral will settle in a district under construction of Bordeaux, in front of the historic city center, just here. The building will assemble in the same structure on 15,000 square meters, a large number of different sports. Obviously, we had in mind Cesc Pompei of Lina Bombardi, which shows and puts forward in a total structure unheated sports spaces for the most part. It also highlights the ability of sport to create strong interaction between different places, between athletes, and between the building itself and its surrounding. So here is our sports cathedral project. It's a concrete frame supporting 5 levels of over 20 meters high and surmounted by a golf practice structure of another 20 meters. The specificity of the project is that the building has no traditional facade, rather than having a mechanical and systematic temperature. We considered that sports practiced in mainly outdoor spaces can work inside the building with no field for heating. Each level is therefore generally open and surrounded by agricultural nets. These nets correspond to an economy of gesture and material, and therefore to a real ecological, quantifiable and concrete approach. Here is detail of the slab and the nets on the facade. There is no smoke extraction, for example, in this building, which in French is almost impossible, and they allow to renew the air while reducing 50% of the wind sensation, because it is the main problem when one exercises a sports activity. So here it's a cutting axonometric of the slab. We imagine this building as 5 overlaid public piazza. We spoke earlier about the relationship between the building and the city. The slab or the support of activities that will be in direct contact with the outside, but also in relation to each other. We seek to open spaces and to create finally very simple links between places of sport practice and natural or urban elements, sort of connected climate. Another Brazilian reference to a Salvador Candia building in Sao Paulo, the Metropole Gallery, because many Brazilian references finally to talk about the sports cathedral explained by a certain sweetness that we seek to speak of the opening to the outside. And when you are outside, you can see inside with this total transparent facade. It's also an economy of gesture, as I said, that leads to remove the superfluous. Here, large floors shelter enclosed spaces, streets, finally a sort of public spaces. The plan of each floor is drawn as a city. It's more or less the same for our project. We try to follow this way. The project plans take up these questions. in a neighborhood and a recurring structure. They mark places, poles, buildings, streets, square. In gray on this plan, unheated spaces, and white space with a controlled temperature for the needs of closed spaces such as restaurants, commerce, and other activities on the upper floor like yoga, a squash, or showers and locker room. In you can see here the main access located on the boulevard, and another access is created here with in relationship with the main plaza. The restaurant is here on the left and shops on the right. In the center stands the climbing wall of 13.5 meters high. This axonometric drawing allow us to see the different programs occupying each level. These are blocks around which we turn. Independent entities that do not constitute a massive building. This creates narrowing distances, different uses spaces. This is the second floor with the squash. Other type of climbing part, the slack lines, jump lines, and height lines, and fitness and fitness spaces. The third level here is occupied by 7 paddle tennis courts, as well as a golf course. So paddle tennis is a new sport, a trendy sport, mixed squash and tennis. Above this, the administration hangs between 2 slabs. And finally, on the roof are the practice area with 14 strike pools, a bar, and a putting green area. The idea here is to hit golf balls while watching Bordeaux and your friend having a beer, just are seeing you. Here some picture showing the building, the center of the neighborhood from the piazza. Here you can see some specific moments that we develop in this almost real strict system of slabs and column. You can see some different staircase here or here with stand, or this one with a curve. It's for us very specific and important and generous moment to transform something very structural in something with special uses permit by architecture. There are moments almost spontaneous, specific place. As I said, the curved staircase, and here the golf practice. here you can see the facade with the nets on the left, and the interior very brut, very simple,
rough
in the building, and the finishing without a lot of paint extra. So to finish, a zoom of the first image, which takes again the assembly of all these logics, all this level of reading. So let's talk about our second specific research about sport did for the Seoul Biennale, the next one, which had a collective city for main topic. We called our research urban enclosure. It's a sort of development of the other research, but focused on the stadium, because for us, a stadium is one of the most important forms of collective space in the city. Donc we split this work in three parts. A representation of the stadium typology with in a video, a physical model of our stadium project in Biarritz, I'm going to present after, and finally an atlas of section which shows a relationship that can have stadium with city. Here is the installation with the atlas and the model. Lot of interest for the Korean. These drawings propose an abstract evolution of the stadium's form from the Greek to today. The first stadium took the form of a U that opened on a square. The Roman closed it to install a tribune stand on all sides, and this shape evolved until the oval and was resumed to make tribune one on side and the other. And the square is finally the most widespread form today. The first sports building typology is Nemachi, a place where naval battles were performed in Roman time. Thereafter, the circus was developed to organize chariot and horse races, harnessed or mounted or even running. And finally, the Coliseum has taken the place of Nemachi to host different types of events. Representing the territory for us is sizing it. It's not just about affirming that the city is a result of a series of more or less coordinate operations. The city is also divided and produced by some of singular interventions that give it a shape. These interventions are determined by the different policies assigned to them. Here we identify an urban object able in our sense to generate new uses, to produce new situations, and to reformulate the place of the collective space in the city, the stadium. This overview allows us to compare the different elements that compose the stadium, the enclosure, the shape, the structure, the compositions, and the urban context. Some famous here, Parc des Princes, as François spoke, Colisée, and Bombonera, for example, Munich. Some very famous typology of stadium. Donc here, some abstract of the videos that we create to compare with already always the field on the center, the surrounding, the enclosure of different stadiums. Donc, here it's in Riyadh, here in Perth, le Colisée, and one of our favorites, Bombonera Stadium in Buenos Aires, with this just little narrow stand opening, and the trails are very opening to the city. The architecture of stadiums generates a multiplicity of uses. In one side, this object active the public space and is connecting to the cities through the square, generating an open and properly collective space. On the other side, we can say that the sport stands in an evolutionary ground where several practices can coexist, allowing a spatial amplification as a political level form and center of manifestation. So the third work in section was for us the sort of our goal has been to create a series of objects, an alphabet of different typology of the chosen stadium. These urban objects will allow us to understand the different contexts in which they have been integrated. We will work in section to recognize the different components of this urban object, the interior-exterior cleavage, the structural elements, and the different uses of the stadium be the focus of attention and will be traduced into a model in plaster of the Aguilera Stadium, the stadium in Biarritz. So Biarritz is a city in southwest of France with an historic rugby club, but also well known for beach and surfing. The stadium is placed in an important sports facilities area. It's one of the pieces of this area. And we won the project last year because we try to consider the stadium just a piece of this big area, with all the pieces where all the pieces have a lot of importance. The running track, the tennis club here, or the Biarritz training camp, because all those elements mean that it's not only a stadium, but a daily sports facilities area open for all the inhabitants each day of the year. So we propose to not transform only the stadium, but the whole area with the same intelligence, the same architectural purpose, goal. Here you can see the new atmosphere that we want to give to the place with the new stadium on the back, totally insert in the area, not too big, not too overwhelming. We have created a simple structure to transform all the spaces, to create something coherent, a coherent intervention with strong globality. And of course, to be performant economically, because the budget is very low, because the business model of a professional club of rugby is not very expensive. So the structure is composed with simple concrete slab, and then some additional furniture, again, placed on it. The stands or simple places as a greenhouse for restaurants and other facilities. we worked with a builder specialist of sports temporary structure that allow us to create also a transformable stadium where greenhouse can be replaced by stands and so on. It's a way to be able to transform a stadium according to the result of the club. In a way, if the club have big results, we can transform a greenhouse with stand. And in the other way, maybe we can transform the stadium in another program if the club disappear. So for the stadium that creates this assemblage, a solid concrete base, we keep just one of the existing stand tribune. We add this concrete base, and then that permits lighter metal mounting structures. Donc all this surrounds the existing grass, and here it's not a big match, maybe a children tournament, but with people in the tribune, and also with this lab transformed to new facilities for the visitors. Cultural gallery, bar, restaurant, something very trendy, is installed below the tribune, and the space for training and a bodega, a big bar on the top. Finally, Aguilera Stadium, or Aguilera Facilities Area, is thought like a small town again, assembling materials, temporality, program, and especially uses. So as a conclusion, we propose a quick tour to other projects that we built or developed, but not totally related to the topic of sports, because we can do other programs. The Circus School in Châlons-en-Champagne, east of France, one of our very important projects, delivery in 2016. François, if you want to speak, you can.
Yes.
Housing in the center of Paris, transformation of an old barrack, and addition of new building, three new buildings surrounding the older one, with big windows. Just delivery 2 months ago, just before the lockdown.
Just a few words about this project and about the windows. It's very specific. In France, these buildings are social buildings, and social buildings are very. We can't do anything in the composition of the apartment in the social buildings, and so we tried to understand with office. The Belgian architects who were associated with us in this project. So we were focused on what could be new. How can we think about social buildings in a new way, when in the same time nothing is possible to change? And so we just said, okay, we can. We are able, because we are in a very old barrack of military, and we have some very huge levels existing around us. We said, okay, we can just have very big stairs and big windows. So it means that every windows that you can see here are 2.4 meters by 2.4 meters, and every rooms have the same windows, and so it creates a new way to think about the space inside the apartment, and to be in a relationship between the apartment and the outside by the window, by this incredibly and anormally huge window. It's just this thing that we touch here, this project.
Another project just delivered with our friend of Central.
Just before the COVID.
Just before. Just before.
We don't know if it's good or not. We just have a few.
Yeah, open and closed. Yeah, with our friend of Central, some architect based in Brussels. It's a cultural center named IMAL, and here it's a transformation of an existing building, and we create these big windows again to open the interior towards the exterior, and to create a special space here in between public and private, surrounded with these big metal coagulate plates and a staircase passing through all the levels.
It's like if the facade came inside the building, and it's every time the same thing. We spoke about sport, but the reason for us for speaking about sport and to present this kind of of the other projects, the link between them are the integration of city, of a way to be concerned about city in every project, and how the city is informed by architecture. We do. That's the relation. So this is a facade, interior facade. Sorry. Yeah.
Here it's a very little project, an extension of a little house in Marseille, south of France. And here, yeah, I have to say again, we worked to largely open the new room to the garden, and to have the possibility to transform the place with these big windows. The white one can move, and the wooden normal one are fixed. And so we worked with this fixed and movable windows and this furniture to create a space, a kitchen, in reality, the more open as possible.
I think we can say that in a way, it's this project was very important because it was a way to begin. I think this project is finished like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and it was a way to think to integrate a kind of structuralism in the Levi-Strauss approach, which speaks about a global language, a global identity, a global structure, a global presence. So this is a global language, and inside this global language, when you zoom in, you have some very specific words. So a global language and specific words inside the building, and it's a way, and we can speak about the last project we show, Nico. it's a way to answer to the first question of Philippe. Is the question of does the form follows the function of the buildings? And in fact, I wouldn't say yes or no directly. I can say that there is a global structure, a global language, which is more powerful than the specific function of the places. So this is a global language upon the functions. But in the same time, it's true that the functions, the different functions, begin to be present when we zoom in to the building. And when we see here, it's the IMVT, the School of Architecture, Landscape and Urbanism we won in Marseille last year. And we will begin to construct the project at the end of the year. And this is a global approach, a global structure, a global organization, and and the structure is very present. And when we zoom in and when we go very near to the building, we can begin to understand that there are some different places, some different programs, some different way to be open to the outside, and that's something very an ambiguity between form and function. This is the answer, and this is the project of Marseille. Nico, do you want to say something about Marseille too?
No, it's okay. And yeah, to finish the last picture, terraces, sun, sea. We hope that it's gonna come back. It's gonna come back very soon. Take care and stay home. Elise, if you want to say something.
Everyone is everyone applauds now because it's 8 in France, and at 8 everyone applauds the helpers and the doctors, etc. So it's not for us. No, it's for them.
Okay.
Guys, thank you so much. Fantastic. Work that I approve of very strongly. We have lots of questions have appeared. And so maybe we can run for another maybe 20 minutes and I can pitch you some of the questions that have appeared in the chat box. I think you, Francois, you answered or you addressed what Philip Christou was talking about in part. But Philip, who, if Francois Nicolas don't know, is one half of Florian Bagel Architects. Philip, would you like to kind of pitch him? You there?
Yep. Yeah.
You've got the mic. Sorry, unmute. No, I'm struggling to unmute.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was a really lovely presentation, and the work is very, very beautiful work. I think there's an elegance in the work, and there's a great kind of public spirit, and I really approve of your way that you're making connections to the city and inside the building and outside the building in a real way, like Lina Bobardi was doing in her projects all the time. My question about form and function is maybe a very general one to all of us. You know, when you have a project which is there's a client and they want a sports for tennis, or you know, they have a particular function they have in mind. Are you do you find yourself saying to them, yes, well, we'll do that. We'll give you this tennis courts and swimming pools and what you want. But we'd like you also to have a garden and a nursery and restaurants and maybe even an art gallery or something, other things. Is that what's happening to you, or do your clients have those multiple ideas already?
I have to say that we tried to, but we lost all the competition where we propose a sort of combination with sports and housing, sports and offices, because it's not very simple to win this type of competition where the program is free. Because you can play or work again some normal program, and at the end of the story, the economic things of projects are very important, and sports doesn't permit to create a very big effort to a city or to an owner of a plot. We tried to do it a lot, but it was not possible so far.
But now we are working on a project of tower with the mayority of Paris, with Pavillon Arsenal in Paris, and we are developing an economic approach at the same time an architectural approach of how to create mixed uses building with ports and apartments and offices and hotel, and we are working on this very precisely, and we are very helped by the public power by the mayority of Paris. So it's becoming now more and more possible, and we try to develop this with a constructor now. And just another thing about the project we already do. We try sometime every time to add some new relation between the building and the outside, and it's not about exactly programs, but when we in Brazza, in Bordeaux, when we don't have facade, it's a way to let the city going inside the building, and we proposed to the constructors to create this practice, this golf practice up in the roof, up on the roof, and to create new relationship between this sport, the practice golf, and the outside. Nico said it was a perfect place to have a beer at the end of the day, and but it's true that we try to create every time this kind of thing. Yeah. And about form follows functions, as I said before, it's not so easy to answer, because forms don't follow functions for us, but forms create something as very a globality, and and points follows functions, I can say.
Yeah. I think that what you said about a kind of Levi-Straussian structuralism.
Yeah, that's it.
Where there's a general bigger order, maybe like a kind of framework type of idea.
Yeah.
And there's specific moments within that are much more local, and I think that's coming through very strongly. Your cathedral of sport is a kind of structural frame that's open, really, and it's going to be transformed a lot in time, I suppose. Yeah. And similarly, the stadium project. Similarly, And I think I just applaud you that if you can continue to allow the project to change and transform in time, that would be great. Yeah.
In fact, for the project of Bordeaux, the constructor asked us, how about tomorrow if we want to create some offices inside this building?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Dwelling.
Yeah, or dwellings, and we had to draw some plans of this kind of reconfiguration, and so it was a
Great, yeah. Lovely, yeah.
Nicola, could you unshare your screen so that we can see faces big, please?
Yes, I can.
And then I'm going to hand over to Julian Lewis, who's founding director of East Architecture and Landscape Design, London-based practice, very much focused on the public realm. Julian, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that lecture. It was really generous, really exciting. What I particularly liked was the intention for the facades of the buildings to speak to the public realm. And I was also struck by the difference between the open structure of the plan and the section, the vibrancy across those buildings, and what Philip has just described as the opportunity for that to grow and change over time. And the contrast with the housing project, which also delightful, but I appreciated similar projects in London where we have also been trying to locate where we can be generous, and it might just be the size of the window. So from these two types, there's a very different quality. And so I had kind of two questions really. One was, do you see, no, it's not a question actually, it's a kind of challenge really. It's like, can you not dramatize the opportunity for this generous plan to actually encourage people, particularly in London, what would that be like, to say, actually, this is how we must start to build. We must start to bring the public space into the buildings. We must start to be playful. Your early part of the lecture was about playfulness, not just sport. Yeah. And I think there's something really strong that could be not just lovely projects, but somehow a whole kind of an idea about the city. And I wanted to hear if you had any thoughts about how that might work in London.
But I think in London, I don't know very much. Nico knows knows London better than me, but I think that it already exists in South Bank, like this project which create this kind of ambiguity between the inside and the outside, the structure and what is open, close, and the place for the skateboarders near to the Thames. And I think it's already working in some place in London. I think it's not more open in France or in Paris. Or I think it's just as you said, it's just. I think it's and as Nico said too, it's a way. It's we have to fight every time, every day, to tell that architecture is not autonomous in the city, and to try to understand which kind of relation the buildings. We don't care the program, but the buildings can create with the outside. Yeah. And it's not just physics. It could be with the sound with the vibration, and as I said before, with the view and the coexisting. So, but so I'm not sure that I can answer to your non-question, but I can tell that it's I think it's a preoccupation of it could be, or it must be, or it's our preoccupation. And I think it could be the preoccupation of everyone. Yeah, and
thank you.
Gabriel Scobini, have I pronounced your name right? I hope so. Gabriel, are you there?
Hi, how are you? Yes.
Yeah. Hey.
Hey guys, great project. I'm here in Boston right now. I'm from Chile. I'm an architect as well. So I haven't seen your project. I think they're great, and I think they're very flexible and very beautiful. So one question regards nowadays health problem. You know, like how this type of architecture will be flexible in a long or short term with these new health inputs. So therefore, large gathering of people in a collective space, you know, like all these sport arenas, or into the city in different scales, as you show in previous projects. So do you think now is an opportunity to develop new instance in architecture to enjoy this kind of a sport entertainment?
So,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut dire? I
so
don't know.
there's a question about about this sort of challenging moment where
But
we're getting ill because of large gatherings of people in sports stadia, I guess. Are there any lessons for how we make sports buildings?
No.
I don't know.
It's
It's too new for us. I have to say that we are our friend of an urbanism practice, Grau, said that they are supporter of the city, and we also think that we are supporter of the city, and maybe the city and us as an architect or urbanist or urban planner have to change our mind because of this it's problem. But I said we will see, but we are also supporter of football, and we really love to go to stadium with a lot of people. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Just a few words about just the question of flexibility of the buildings. It's a way to speak about to answer to the question of the form and the function, but also a question of we like to think that architecture permits to create new things and to let uses and maybe sometimes programs, even the programs that we don't know yet, undefined programs at the beginning, but we like to think that the buildings can permit new usings, maybe that we don't know already, but it's more about the question of so that's why we don't really like beginning by the question of the design, because it's the end of the question. We like to begin by the question of what is the permission with this building. And as Nico said, Brazza Bordeaux is just 5 slabs of public piazza, and we can do whatever we want in this piazza. So, and
I have a question, kind of partly prompted by the fact that we've had, I think, 4 or 5 questions from men, and that's that. This is a very powerful idea that I think you're putting forward, that sports buildings can be public space. But I'm interested in to what extent you find that this kind of public space is differentiated along the lines of gender or the lines of race. Is it a public space where all people can come together, or how do you negotiate those sort of nuances in the buildings? Was I clear, or was that confusing?
Nico, tu veux commencer?
Non, vas-y, tu veux.
Non, mais, est-ce que c'est une question d'argent?
Non, je crois.
No, I'm asking about as a model for public space. The sports building is a model for public space.
Yeah.
Sports sports is an environment in which men and women don't necessarily come together, that they have separate activities. And I'm asking, is that a tension in your work? The idea of sports buildings as inclusive environments, is that complicated by the fact that men and women often are playing sports, on very segregated gender lines?
Yeah. We haven't had this type of problems, if I well remember, with the developers and the future users in Brazza. The rules are really normal in a way, with the different cloakroom, etc. But the field, the sports, it can be shared with women and men. And I try to remember. We are actually we are currently working in a big project in Paris for the Olympic game, and there is this kind of question because it's in the north of the city, Porte de la Chapelle, a very art district, and with this kind of problem, but also rich and poor, etc., and immigration and we don't think that we can manage all this problem, but we are developing the project with the idea that our architecture and for a big arena can help with a sort of calm, of precision, of openness, of as I said, sort of a supporter of the city to create an atmosphere helpful to transform the relationship in between women and men, and poor and rich, for foreigner and people who live there. And yes, sports facilities can help to do that. I came from Marseille, and the stadium of Marseille is very famous, but also because every people can go there. It's not expensive, and the whole part of the population are mixed in this stadium without any difference, and we quite like this idea, and we try to keep it. And it's also the idea to have the stadium into the city. We fight to keep the stadium into the city and not very far from the city, and you can go there with cars or I don't know, and that changed a little bit all the surrounding. So
it's also a question. It's very it's a paradox, because we say every time that sport has to be open to the outside, and it's true that in the same time you have this question of the kind of segregation, of separation between poor and rich, between the women and men, and it's really strange. And we have every time to say invent how to be open to the city, and at the same time to explain that we can be seen at the same time from the city. And this is the Cours des Lions, the swimming pool, and I showed you before. And from the city, we can see inside the swimming pool. But now it's true that it's a question. So this project was in 1981, and now I'm not sure that we can do this like that. And to be seen in the swimming pool from the outside without screen or something like that. And that's a very paradoxical point, because we are from the south of France, as Nico said, and in the same time we ask this question, but at the same time on the beach there are 1 million people together, naked or quite naked.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
And there is no problem.
French style.
So this is a paradox, and we have to deal with this every day.
Guys, thank you so much. It was a fantastic presentation. Tell us a little about, you're both in Paris at the moment. How are things